welcome to everyone. I'm going to be your MC. Today I'm Ruth Brody-Sharon, creator of Meet Me There, the Interfaith Musical, and a longtime devotee of interfaith engagements and getting to know you, getting to know all about you. So, we're here today through the sponsorship and through the energy of Uprising Together. And the goal was to bring people together for dialogue and conversation together. That's really behind everything that we say today. The idea, the reigning idea is together. Tati is one of the founders after she, for more than 30 years, ran IONS LA, Institute of Noetic Science. She brought people here from all over the world to address cutting-edge subjects, and she was so successful at it that those people became famous because they came to speak to the groups that she organized. Now, I'm joking, but people like Bruce Lipton, she invited Bruce Lipton to speak 5 times in a row because she knew that he was on to something magical and important for us to know about ourselves. But epigenetics, of how we can overcome our genetics and change our lives, right? Yay. And Lynn Crandall, who's here, the mistress of networking. So we're going to have time to introduce ourselves afterwards, but I'm going to introduce you now to our 2 speakers today, who have also been part of Uprising Together. But what's wonderful about the group is that many people who are members are either founders or activists in other organizations that basically, as Swami Shiva, our beloved Shiva, from the Vedanta Society used to say, many tributaries, one river. And so all of us here are working towards the same goal. And sometimes we do it in different ways and different approaches, but ultimately we want to find a way to inhabit the world peaceably and for every person to reach his and her potential. And some of us do it through activism, some of us do it through literature or music, some of us do it through creating friendships across the Great Divide. So let me introduce you to, and could you stand for a moment, Dennis and Kara, could you actually come and be with me here? Just stand here to my right for a moment. So Dennis Cohn is the founder and CEO of the Resolutionaries. He changed the V to an S, and that has made all the difference, right?
Makes all the difference.
As founder of the Center for Enforcement of Family Support, Dennis Cohn earned his nickname, the Robin Hood Lawyer, for his work chasing deadbeat parents who didn't pay their child support. He was a featured guest on such programs as Oprah Winfrey Show, CNN, and his work was endorsed twice in Dear Abby's column. In his practice, Dennis witnessed the power of listening to another's story as a major first step in helping parties reach an agreement. Can you imagine? Listening. Believing that within every conflict lies the seeds of resolution, Dennis transitioned from litigation to mediation. You changed the L to an M. First you changed the L to an M, then you changed it, the V to an S. Okay. In 2000, he started Settlement Works, a mediation practice designed for divorcing couples who were hoping to resolve their differences without going to court.
With Susan Dale.
With me.
With Susan Dale. Okay. As a mediator, Dennis witnessed angry, hurt, and mistrustful people setting aside their differences and finding solutions to their issues. for their own benefit and the future of their children. If simply talking and listening can work so well for people who are generally at their worst, it can also work for us as a nation. That's the belief that led Dennis to found Resolutionaries, with the aim of bringing together people from across the political spectrum to dialogue about matters such as gun control, immigration, abortion, vaccination, and other hot-button issues. Dennis has seen how the simple process of being curious and listening to each other can shift the paradigm from fighting out our problems to working together to solve them. A shift that can have a profound effect on our world and the world of future generations. Dennis Cohen. At his side, his right arm, right? To his right is Kara Jarosinski. She is the executive director of Resolutionaries, formerly a facilitator for Fortune 500 companies and an award-winning author. She's now the executive director of Resolutionaries. Kara turned to bridge building after the birth of her twins, one of whom is here today. Please say hello to Elizabeth. Elizabeth. Hey. Never had talking less and listening more felt more important. When Dennis Cohen approached Kara with the idea of championing bridge building on a national scale through the bipartisan bill in Congress called the Building Civic Bridges Act. How many of you voted for that? Yes. Well, it's not too late, is it? Is it still possible? Because I voted for it, I sent it to my friends, and by the end of today, I hope you'll all sign on to be one of the signatories. It's a very important bill. The idea is, it's in Congress, and it's called the Civic Bridges Act. That's when she jumped aboard to be the CEO of Resolutionaries. For the past year, Kara has spearheaded Resolutionaries' goal of raising awareness and support for this groundbreaking legislation. I don't believe we've ever had a bill like that. Am I correct? Never, okay. It is largely due to her efforts and that of the Resolutionaries team that the BCBA, that's the initials of the Building Civic Bridges Act, that the BCBA was introduced just over, was it a week ago?
On the 15th.
March 15th, the Eyes of March, right? 2024.
The ideas of March.
See, you keep changing your letter. With the official endorsement of over 80 major national religious, educational, business, community, and military organizations all across the political spectrum. And before I turn over the microphone, I'd just like to introduce there are two people here today from Braver Angels, Susan Rico and Robert McDuff. And they are fellow and sister travelers pursuing the same mission, and I'm really happy. Thank you for coming today. I wanted you to know more about the Resolutionaries and to them to know more about you, and it turns out that Dennis is already a member of Braver Angels. So that's the point, isn't it, friends? We're doing this together.
Yep.
And whatever organization is near us that is heading in the same direction, we want to make sure we can help them flourish, because we're going to flourish together. Tati, the operative word is?
Together.
Okay. Thank you so much for who you are and what you do every day in your lives. And thank you, Dennis and Kara, for leading us to a mountain, to a high mountain today. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for taking this sunny day in the midst of the rains before and after, apparently, to come and talk about the important issues of getting along. You know, studies have shown that we're more polarized, more divided than we've been at any time since the Civil War. Many of us feel it in our families, at a workplace, with friends, where we're arguing about important issues. And we see it broadcast in the media, on social media, everywhere. The word is, we're not getting along, we can't talk to each other, we're right, they're wrong. And yet, there are so many things that are going on right now. Organizations who are working day and night to bring people together, to have conversations, to teach people the skills that they need to relate and understand and have meaningful conversations so that we can work together to solve our problems rather than fighting over it. Today we're going to see a film. It's part of the Better Together Film Festival that's about to come out. All right. And it's called Purple. It's an example of one of many, many programs that are out there where people are brought together from different, ends of the political spectrum. And sometimes it's just for a few hours, sometimes it's for a whole weekend. And they get a chance to talk and listen to each other and understand a little bit. And they come away from it, not necessarily changing their minds, their beliefs, but they change one essential belief. That is, there's more than one point of view. There's validity to both sides. There's a perspective. And that person, just because they don't believe the same as I do, isn't bad and wrong and stupid and selfish. Rather, they have reasons for it. And the number one thing they come away with is, this is good, we should have more of it. So it works. Bridge building works. So we're going to show this film in just a minute, and then we're going to have a little of our own discussion, because when you hear that we're more divided than we have been in hundreds of years, does it resonate with you in your own lives? How many of you have friends, family, and you've had this experience of being in an argument over something that maybe in the past you wouldn't have argued about, you would have listened to each other? I certainly have. How many of us avoid having discussions because we don't want to get in an argument? God forbid Thanksgiving dinner gets ruined because someone mentions, the election or something like that. So we're going to look at that a little bit, and then we're going to see what resources are there and what we can do personally to help change, shift the way things are going in our own lives and in the world. Okay? So I think with that, we're going to run the movie.
How many of you would say that you've witnessed or experienced tensions connected to political differences in the communities within which you're a part? Okay. How many of you have avoided talking with someone about some controversial topic or political issue because you know that they are in a different place than you are? All right. Yeah, we are in an epidemic of a contempt, anger, and siloing with respect to political differences and divides in our country. Studies have found that we are more divided in America today than at any point since the Civil War. Right here in the Driftless is one of the more purple areas in the country, with strong red and blue, living in the same neighborhoods, often going to the same churches, and also many people here who would define themselves as purple or something other, don't feel like they fit into the two-party system very well at all. So we're going to be doing a few different exercises to really delve into who we are. We're going to give you several minutes to make a list. Moments in your life that most powerfully formed or changed your personal, moral, or political makeup.
I'm at total peace on the river. That's where I spend most of my time because it is honest, basic, and unforgiving. And as a young person, the death of a baby brother, grandpa, and my favorite aunt within a 6-month period when I was 12 years old influenced the rest of my life. That's why I became a paramedic and a firefighter, rescued, saved lives. I'm still willing to lay down my life, if necessary, for a total stranger. I think of all the human traits, the one I treasure most is integrity. If I tell you I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. If I tell you I got your back, I got your back. And that's not going to change. That's pretty much it. So, who's next?
I grew up in a small town, very religious. We were homeless for a while. We were hungry for a while. My parents were too proud to take assistance, and that translates a lot into my politics and my approach. I also identify within the LGBT community as bisexual is probably the easiest term to use. I was suicidal a good chunk of my high school career because I kept questioning why God would make me like this, or why would I just want, in a sense, pray the gay away. So my big formative life was going to college, to be honest, and getting away from my small town and figuring out who the heck I am. And the job that I do now works on seeing people's humanity and seeing them for themselves and all of who they are and what they bring to the table. And I've spent my life seeing how people are not valued by the way they are or for who they are.
I have no idea what your views of the scriptures are, but all the principles are in there as far as relationships, where we value another person ahead of ourselves, where we are good employees with integrity, where we are good bosses who don't lord it over those entrusted to us. I mean, it's just like, aren't those just about everything that we need for life? My parents divorced when I was 10 years old. I didn't know any other kids at that time whose parents are divorced. And I was from the generation where all of a sudden divorce was starting to grow and become rampant, and broken families that we didn't have prior to the 60s and 70s. And so seeing the ramifications and what that's done in our culture, where I end up politically, and it's basically whatever we can do as a society to support strong families. And if we do it right, the way we're meant to, that so many of our other problems wouldn't be where they're at.
I was born abroad in the West Bank, moved to America when I was very young. I was more often excluded from groups in elementary school for a lot of different reasons, whether it was because I didn't play Sega Genesis like they did, or I didn't know who my favorite baseball team was, right? I grew up in a very poor inner city, so I always try to be on the side of the underdog. In college, I started after-school programs. I led bicycle trips with kids, and seeing kids expand their understanding of their communities and where they can go, always, maybe it was a dopamine hit, right? I always wanted to do more for more people.
We're going to do an activity designed to purposefully surface some of the differences and divides that are present in the room, and then we will have an extended conversation on some of the issues that have arisen or some of the things that we know we all care about most.
We're so locked into our parties, and one's going to take the extreme of the other.
Is it one immigrant? Is it 1,000? Where do we start to care about the humanity that we're showing other people?
It feels like we all value the autonomy of a mother, and that we all value life in the womb.
I don't think the government has any voice in this. Nobody owes me a living. Nobody owes them a living. Earn it.
1% of our population owns 90% of the wealth.
a little voice inside said, this is important to do, so that's why I'm here. I'm supposed to be here.
There is this question around the social safety net, what it offers, and the problems with it. Earlier, several of you focused on a frustration or a critique, but there were differences here.
I believe in a social safety net because I also believe ultimately that I benefit. My security is taken care of not just by cops who stop bad people, but by social benefits that provide food to people who then don't have to go out and rob others in order to eat, right? And in that way, I feel more secure in the society that I live in.
I was a firefighter, paramedic. 25 years I did this. And some people really who are in need, I mean, you feel compassion for them, but other people that just milk the system for all it's worth, I don't think it's right.
I so agree with that. And I just thinking of the analogy of a parent, just how hard it is for a parent to let their kids fail in any way or to be needy in any way. And yet, the more that I continue to do for them and bail them out on things, and the less they're gonna learn important life lessons. And so I think we struggle with that as a society. How do we best care for people, but not do so much that we are inadvertently keeping them in dependency? You know, we're part of a church and we do our best with benevolent fund and helping people, but the other thing we do work really hard at is strengthening families. You know, empower kids to make good choices, that babies are birthed in healthy marital situations, not, you know, all those kind of cultural things that really do contribute to economic stability.
As Karen was saying there, I think that's important that we teach these kids and then get out of the way as much as you can. Because as long as you're dependent on somebody to do the work for you, why should you do the work? There's no incentive.
This brings up so much.
Yeah.
I don't think our government does enough for the people that live in this country. I think that the way our country was set up to begin with, being on stolen land from people, and then we have built a country on the back of slave labor and continue to in some ways. I really don't feel like most people wake up thinking that I want to be one of these like nags on society. If we're a country built on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but we ensure that most people have no chance at happiness, how are we really upholding any of this?
Something sort of energized me, AJ, that people can't begin to understand sort of the injustices that we live in, and that formed the base and foundation for people who are doing well. And then thinking about, you know, the way that I view the social safety net, and it comes back to something that no one's really said the word much today, but privilege, right? You know, going back to Karen, you talk about helping your children, but realizing that helping them has in some ways hindered them. To which I say, you provided more for your kids than just the things that they wanted, but you probably provided them the tools and the support and the love and the knowledge that if they miss a car payment, you'll support them for that month if they prove that they can pay it for the next month. Whereas there are so many people who, if they miss that car payment, they can't turn to anyone. So there's a privilege that your children also carry with them.
Well, Akram, I don't know anybody, anything. So when I was in junior high school, I got a 50-cent a week allowance. Fantastic. Got into high school, say, Dad, I'm going into high school now, I'll be taking girls out, going to football games, a little more allowance. He said, how much were you thinking? I said, well, $1. Said, get a job. And that was the last I was on the dole. Now, if somebody can't work for whatever reason, by all means, we need to support these people every way possible. They deserve a quality of life. But if they can work and they don't want to work or not work much, why in the world should people who have worked their entire life? I started working when I was 13 years old, and I'm still working. I'm a senior citizen, and I'm still out there busting my hump 200 days a year when possible, either doing farm work or herding cattle or guiding. Why should I pay for anybody? Supplement their type of thing.
I think that a lot of times that when people don't work, there are other reasons there, right? Whether they don't know how to interview very well or they don't have the skills. You talked about at 13, you were able to go and get a job because your dad told you to. You used skills that your father probably taught you.
Well, Akram, if this doesn't begin in the home, who's responsible for it?
In a lot of other societies, it's not just the nuclear family unit that's responsible for children, but the collective.
You know, my dad, when he cut off my allowance, he said, go get a job. He called my uncle, said, hey, I got a worker for you. So I started at the princely wage of $1.25 an hour.
With your uncle?
With my uncle.
Who was looking out for you?
Well, no, he set me straight. This life is not easy, guys. Even though we're living in America where it's about as easy as it gets, you still got to fight for everything that's worth fighting for.
But I think for some, it is easier. You know, I was a poor trailer trash kid when I was growing up, and we were on some of that assistance. And if you are coming from 3 generations of living off social services, you're not learning that work ethic. So now I have 40 employees because I've worked my ass off to get there. But I was also fortunate enough that my father-in-law had the capability of signing on the dotted line for that first house I needed to get to start my business. And if I wouldn't have had that.
So you're giving recognition to the fact that when you have social networks who are able to help, you have greater likelihood that your work will produce better outcomes.
Yeah, but you also have to be willing to work hard to get there.
But it's not enough?
No.
And what Ted said essentially was like, okay, well, if you don't have those networks, whose responsibility is it? Is it the government's responsibility? And it sounded like, you know, you said, Akram, there's a communal responsibility. Karen, you said, like, we're doing this as much as we can in the church. Whose responsibility is it? What do people think?
I just want to echo that point again. One of our values at church actually is intergenerational relationships. So instead of just the financial and economic handout, we need the older generation teaching the younger generation these work ethic things. We need that hard work of people caring enough to get in there and help these struggling families. Marvin Olasky, the editor of World Magazine, says, social justice is a sum of millions of acts of relational justice. So we tend to think of it as who we vote for, and it's those big things, but it's not. It's those small little things that we do every day to connect and mentor the next generation.
Is there a difference for you if that connecting is enabled by the church and enabled by government or institutions?
It's probably a both and. It's probably a both and for sure, yep.
AJ, I heard you express a lot of discouragement, especially about what you called the lack of people's ability to pursue life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Can you imagine things that societally or governmentally could be done that would make you feel like, okay, people do have a fair shot? In your sort of dream, I'm curious how it would actually play out if you could control the levers for a day.
Nobody wants to answer that question.
Think of the
You do not want me to answer that question. I want people to be in a place where all their basic needs are being met on the daily without having to justify why they deserve to have basic needs. Like, if you're another human being, you deserve to have access to health care, to food, to shelter.
And this whole argument about work ethic, that doesn't...
You're a human
that seems
being.
like a mistake.
Like,
just by virtue of being a human being.
In my opinion, yeah. There are so many times that I've been working my ass off and got nowhere. Like, I just had a conversation with my mother who's been at her job for 20 years and is making $15 an hour. And she's been there forever.
Look at our groups and what you said. I mean, here you have a master's degree, you're highly educated, very intelligent, and you've got a huge student debt. I think you said like $19,000?
Oh, no, $130,000.
$130,000. So, could you vote for a Democrat candidate who says, okay, come on in, free college?
Sure.
So you're
I want everyone to have access to education.
So you're still willing to eat that $130,000
Yes.
in debt? Whoa.
I know I'm radical. It's
Isn't that
scary.
putting you at a disadvantage?
Yes.
Wow.
I don't want people to struggle as hard after me. I want people to find value in each other and to find value in community. And if that means me sitting here and being in debt the rest of my life while someone else gets a free ride, like, cool. Like, I really hope that when you get that education, you see the value in yourself and what you can give the community. And then that will come back in return for me. I play the long game.
Let's talk about the long game for a second. What about the people that came before you?
What do you mean?
Well, I've been working for 55 years. I still have to work till the day I drop because my pension is diminishing with each dollar.
Just so we're clear on what's being said here, you're saying, well, I'm still here, actually, and the policies you're talking about are going to harm me.
And the money, my earning capacity keeps going down the older I get. I'm wearing out.
I'm also willing to give you what you need.
I don't want you to give. I've earned it.
It's not about that.
There's, I think, an underlying difference here that's emerging. You're saying in terms of policy, the very problem he's naming, well, that's something we can and should address. That's not right. And it sounded like what you're saying is, I don't want that.
Throw the old dog a bone?
No.
I won't take it.
It's about community. Like all of our families used to take care of each other. We used to have grandparents that lived in our house, and our parents lived in our house, and we've moved away from that. And with that, we've moved away from valuing our folks who are older than us. Like, it's not about a handout. I should be taking care of you because I value you as a perfect person. And it's not about taking care, because you would have taken care of me when I was younger. And you were doing that by contributing to society as a working person.
There's a fundamental different interpretation of the moral quality of something coming to you from government. There was a sense of integrity and pride that getting more from government undermines that pride as far as you're concerned, undermines that integrity. You're saying absolutely, as far as that's concerned. That is a different interpretation than what AJ is saying, which is government programs should be not demeaning. It's a way to honor people as they're growing older with care. It's like radically different ways of looking at what would happen as government is supporting retirees.
When I hear you talking about community, we need to take care of one another, it sounds like you're mostly saying that means that the government becomes our community. Isn't there also a part of that that then disincentivizes each of us in our own giving because the government will do it? And in unintended consequences, we begin to lose community because we're no longer obligated to one another in that way because the government will take care of it. And I know I've been guilty of that sometimes. So I'll say, well, they're on food stamps, they're fine. Whereas before we had quite that growth of that safety net, we did just inherently, we took care of our elderly. They were in our homes because we had to, and community was built in.
So you're saying the very community that AJ wants to achieve, if the vehicle is government, people don't rise up to care for one another because you think that this person is being taken care of by this program or that program, and the very social relationships that AJ has returned to over and over again don't actually get invested in.
This is more than just our government, it's our culture, it's our way of life. I don't really want anything to do with how we govern right now, but I'm trying to work with you all to find that solution and really work toward the middle, to be honest with you. As much as I am radical as
socialist.
that's the thing about our country is we are able to sit down and have these conversations, and I do not take that for granted. I use my voice all the time because I have a right to use my voice, and a lot of other places in the world do not have that right. And so we need to continue to do this because that's what all of the people who came before us died for. That's why, is so we can sit here and have this discourse.
I really appreciate hearing your thoughts and understanding your worldviews and having you listen to mine in a real way. I feel like through these kinds of conversations with people of extraordinarily different belief systems, it is always incremental, it's always forward progress for the betterment of everyone.
It's been really neat to share this with intelligent conversation with people a lot smarter than I am, a lot more perceptive and open-minded than I am. This is just a fine group of Americans, and only in this country could we have such diverse opinions and still have hope. America's best days are yet to come. That's what I take away from this.
I will name my appreciation for this helpful reminder that people of opposing political viewpoints aren't the caricatures that I sort of often assume that they are. It's been a joy for me to encounter people who bring more nuance and complexity to their politics than I sort of lazily assume is true most of the time. So thank you.
lovely tables for a reason. We really want to be able to have this be interactive. We want you to be able to experience things just like the people in the film did. So right now, I'd love for you to turn to someone next to you, and Ruth, because we have an uneven number, if the two of you will chat. There was Lynn's here. She's coming back. If you'll turn to the person next to you, and if you'll just begin to share what really struck you from this film. What is staying, when you heard something, did it go, that's an interesting thought? Or did you have a spark of emotion? Whether in whatever emotion that might be. So just turn, and we're just going to take a couple of minutes just to chat.
I want to say not all
Was there anything new that came to your thoughts?
Out of our discussion or out of the movie?
Out of your discussion, out of the movie, anything new percolating for you? Just take a moment. You don't necessarily have to discuss it, but take a notice if anything strikes you that hasn't struck you before.
I don't have a microphone. I'm not good at talking publicly without a microphone. Just kidding. Just kidding. We were talking a little bit about sort of the evolution of society and the support structures that we have. So back in the day, it seems like families were more stable, more kids grew up in a solid, father-mother family, not true across maybe all races and economic classes, but more so than today. We also used to be more of a church nation, to be honest. So fewer people go to church today. A lot of churches are struggling. They don't support families and their congregational members as much as they would like to and as much as they used to. And then you have the government, which seems like people are relying on more today than they used to, but when you put them all together today, it doesn't seem like it's being very effective.
So what struck out to you was a lot of the history and how our society has been structured over time, and then the role of the government into how the government's role has changed as society has changed.
Yeah, just pointing that out. It's not something that I hadn't thought about before, but that came through their discussion, and so it makes the issue more complex and a serious one to deal with.
So not an easy yes or a no stance. Yes or no it's a little more complicated to answer a big policy question like that.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. Was there anything at this table that really struck out to you? Yes.
Something that I appreciated was that people told their story, and that is so bonding, and it creates a kind of empathy. We're tribal. We listen, we learn through story. Even if it's a brief history, you immediately develop empathy, which greases the path to better communication.
So when we take that chance of being vulnerable and of really sharing our heart with someone else, to tell our story of where we've come from and why we believe what we believe and what has happened in our lives, that process creates an empathy and creates a connection, so that in big, complicated policy matters which have been impacted by time and society and government and practices, we get to distill it down to just you and me, and where your heart is and where my heart is. Anything from here?
I think I've been nominated. Well, in general, I deal with psychology, so I deal with processes, and it's hard to get people to agree to move through life differently. We talked a little bit about that magic moment in the video where he just was so sure he was right, and then he shifted when he kept pushing on that lady to say, well, I don't see your perspective. Would you give up all your money, or you would still be in debt, and then this would, you know, these other people would go forward without you? And she said yes, and then backs it up with credible, you know, examples from her life. And then he kind of had, like I said, that magic moment where he went, oh my God, I see that. I don't agree with it, but I can see where you got that. That's the storytelling. That's being able to see another perspective and still stand with your own integrity. And that's what I liked about his statement.
And that's, oh, I'm sorry. I just sit that, and I did see that's where we're going to get the solution. She finished up saying, I'm coming your way,
right,
from her perspective, which I think is missing. I felt back and forth from the Midwest. So I see the wall and how we're separated, and I find having these discussions very difficult. And also I see different media, and no one comes up with solutions. It's all about the problem.
Yeah.
And even coming from our perspective,
right,
but then we don't get to the solution part, which I think you guys are all about.
Yeah.
Ruth, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you so much.
I want to say that I've seen this film before, but it doesn't matter. You know, I didn't feel, oh, I've seen this, I can just be thinking about something else. But what really came home to me this time is that very often the people on the other side of the Great Divide are extremely intelligent and well-spoken.
Yeah.
And we have this, or I have this tendency to think about that people who don't agree with me are maybe not as well-read, you know, not as involved in political activism, or they come from a certain part of the country, and so how would they know? And more you start to see that it has nothing to do with intelligence or learning. It's really more about life experience, where they grew up. Gary was telling me his wife came from Nebraska, where there are a lot of MAGA Republicans there. And so the environment that you grow up in, and then to break out of that, to be able to say that that doesn't define you, and to see the other person as intelligent with great life experience and heartfelt, it's so liberating. And then you have to think about the ideas separately, and you can't think about the stereotypes once you pass that. And you have to start thinking about really what is it that I would want for the country, and how can I explain it in a way.
That power, that going back, sorry, I don't know your name. Hyla. I'm Kara. It's nice to meet you. What Hyla said about sharing your own personal story and going heart to heart, and how powerful that is for breaking down stereotypes, so that we don't go into whoever is on that other side of the political spectrum, that other is this, fill in the blank. And what's ironic, I'll tell a story that kind of gets to this. In some of the work that we've been doing, I'm on the phone with a lot of people all day long. And in the morning, I had a call with the president of the College Republicans of America. And he said, obviously we're working on the bill. I'm not going to take time to talk about the bill, but for the purposes, we were talking about this. And he said, you know, I went to college in a place where there were a lot of Democrats, and we were in the minority. And there was a day that I was in the cafeteria with some friends, and these students came by and they spat on us. And he said, would this bill help to create conversations between college Democrats and college Republicans, or college libertarians, or college forward party, or college whoever it might be? Would it help to create those conversations? And I said, yes, it would. And he said, okay, I'm for it. That same day, in the afternoon, I had a conversation with a gentleman that lives in Florida, and he's transgendered. He works with the military to help, and the VA, to help create a system by which the VA can to help the VA employees know how to best care for their vets that are going through transitions. And he was telling me a story about being at a table, and he said this group of people came by and spat on us because they knew we were trans. The very same day, the president of the College Republicans of America, and a trans man in Florida told me stories of getting spat on while just sitting at a table. And I thought, what in the heck is happening to our country where we're just spitting on each other? And I think it gets to the heart of what you all are talking about, that if someone is an other, then somehow that becomes okay. And we've seen this played out multiple times in history, haven't we? Where when you other someone, suddenly they are no longer a human, they are someone that you can demean or dehumanize or do, God forbid, many other awful things to. So the key to that is humanity, right? It's heart-to-heart connections, it's sharing, and it's the other thing that you did, Ruth, that I think is so brave and wonderful, is that you admitted how you had been feeling in the past, and you owned that, and then moved on. You said, this is it, and I see that now. And I just want to say that takes so much courage and so much bravery. Thank you so much for being willing to do that.
I said we, and then I decided that wouldn't be fair. I have to.
Right. So I want to say one of the things that struck me about this film also is that they're having a conversation about something that really is fundamental to each of the different parties in our in our country, of how do we deal with the social safety net. Each party seems to have a very clear opinion about what we do or don't do, and yet I didn't see anyone fighting at all. Why do you think that is? What conditions were present at that table that meant no one fought? Yes, Susan, right?
Community that's tight with people from both sides, so they're side by side. They're not siloed apparently. So just being in that around people that are different more often.
Yeah, being around. There's a gentleman out of Johns Hopkins. His name is Seth Kaplan. Has anyone ever? He came out with a book called Fragile Neighborhoods, and he talks about how polarization has actually been impacted by urban planning. Because when you go from your house to your car, which is in a garage, and then pull up the garage door and back out, have you seen a single neighbor in that process? And then you drive to a really big box store that's full of all sorts of anonymous people because it's way out, not necessarily in your neighborhood. How often? Every once in a while you might run into someone, but it's not like if you went to the corner store or to the local grocery. So how interesting, urban planning itself. Like when we're actually in community or walking our dogs or going to the park or going to a communal space, how that keeps the othering from happening, because then it's just a neighbor. What else was present in that video? Yes, Evelyn.
I'm a teacher. I've taught in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York, and Los Angeles, which gave me a wonderful opportunity to be in a lot of different areas. And one thing about this film that they said was sometimes people are born into a broken family or mentally ill issues and the parents don't help them. But this is America, and we're supposed to have a unified school system that helps people. And my experience has been that teaching and giving children just that opportunity of talking to each other in groups. Every time I went to a new school in a new state, I was the last hired, first fired, nobody knew, and I just bonded with those kids. I'd get 38 kids in one classroom, break them into groups of 5, and kind of check those groups. You know, you get one who's a techie, one who's an artist, one who's a poet, and let them come up with their own solutions. And out of that, I met David G. Brown, and I did his 50th birthday party, and now we're about to do his 70th birthday party. And he's going to show how your library card is your passport to your future. Tales from the Children collection show kids telling their own stories to each other. And I believe this is a tool that we, as a group of community capacity builders, can begin to show existing resources, how we expand and sustain them, and take them to the 50-state HUD pipeline and get it into all of our veterans' low-income housing across the whole United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm going to pull out some of the things that you said. Is that all right? So one of the things that really stood out that you talked about, Lynn, is you bonded with those kids. And that made all the difference, right? And that also, the other thing that you really stood out from the end is that resources. How resources are invaluable and how bonding, this has come up multiple times, heart to heart, that really creates a difference when we're sitting around a table having a conversation. One of the things that I noticed is the moderator himself, who was very good about reflecting back and forth, right? I see some people nodding. And that process of really making sure people feel heard goes a long way. Studies have shown that when someone feels heard, when they really feel connected, that they are far less likely to get angry, far more willing to be flexible, and to ask you to state something again, and being willing to actually have a conversation more than getting into the point that you're just arguing. So that is an incredibly valuable tool. What we'd like to do now is to, again, turn to your pair, your partner that you had earlier, and I want you to choose amongst yourself who is going to speak and who is going to listen. So go ahead and make that decision. And the person who is going to listen, your job is going to be, after the person who is speaking is done, is going to be to mirror, to make sure that the person who has spoken has really feels heard. Now, the person who is speaking, remember at the beginning when Dennis asked you if polarization and the politics have really impacted you. I think nearly everyone nodded their head or raised a hand. If you feel comfortable, will you please tell us a story that has happened for you that really stands out in your mind about how politics has impacted your life? What was the conversation that happened or didn't happen that changed things for you? That really, when you think politics has impacted me, what's a conversation that really comes up for you?
But the biggest one is my sister. My sister's been in Democratic politics for years. Moved away and then busy. The world.
Okay, so here's the next step. Let me ask you, for those of you who are telling the story, is there something in your past, in your heart, that you wish the person that in the story that you were telling, whoever is on that other side of the political spectrum, is there something from your past, something, part of your heart, that you wish that other person could have known about you in that moment? Something that would contextualize it. Okay, now, listeners, if you have not yet already, please mirror back to the person telling the story. What have you heard? If you're the listener, what did you hear in your partner's story? Tell them what you heard. Tell them from heart to heart. All right, here's the next step. The storyteller had a story that involved themselves, and I would presume at least one other person that was on the other side of the political spectrum.
Now, listeners and storytellers, will you please work together to think about that other person on the other side of the political spectrum? And what might be the mirroring you could have done in that moment for them? And also ask yourself, what are some of the contextualization that might help frame why that person believes the way they believe and feels the way they feel? So take a second and work with your partner to just mirror back to that other person in that story.
We can make up
So I found we have more common ground.
All right, now I want to make sure that everyone feels complete in this. So if the person who was mirroring would like to share their own story very briefly about something that has happened for them in terms of politics causing a bit of a problem, please take this time. Or if there's anything else you feel like you need to share in order to really make sure this conversation is complete, please do that now. And then we're going to switch to a new piece. I'd love to hear if there's anything that really felt revelatory to anyone in this process. Anything that felt, of course, please don't feel like you need to share anything personal, not at all. But if there was anything in the process that felt like an aha moment. Yes, Lynn.
Okay, when you told us to do that, my brain went to classroom things and how we work with politics in a classroom and everything. And he started out telling me that he had political problems with use of water. And that was like, whoa, this is so big, and how is he going to get to politics with water? But then I kept asking questions, he kept explaining it bigger, and then we saw that some people just want to use water in a way that will get the water right to them and their needs, irrespective of whether they're taking it away from somebody else. I thought, whoa, that's too big for me.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting, the power of curiosity? The power of a question. We live in a very declarative country where we really like to be America with an exclamation mark. And there's this feeling that that's in the zeitgeist of that power of declaring. And yet what I love about this is the power that you found in a question. And the power of questions to carry us a lot further. After all, when you make a declaration, where do you go from there? But when you ask a question, where don't you go? It allows for all possibilities. Does anyone have any other thoughts that they'd like to share from this exercise?
I'm pretty open-minded and center-left, I would say, from talking to people. And I think that's the problem we have going. Everybody's in our lanes and we're not complying. I thought I was progressive, then I talked to more progressive people. But we're talking about vaccines, pro and con. I came from the left, and my infosphere was towards the left, and we're kind of both stuck. We're having good conversations, but we're still kind of positioned. And even with my trying to look at things from above, I'm still positioned. And I think we're getting a little bit of each of that. And instead, we haven't really talked about solutions, which we get to. Is there a solution?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with information and disinformation, but it's fed to us on a daily basis through official channels. And so if you go to other channels, which then become suspect, right? Or they're tapped out and you don't have access to them anymore, hard. And I'm saying this as a journalist who spent a lifetime looking for information to verify things so that I could write about it accurately. I don't know anymore what is accurate. I really feel that that has changed so much that it makes it hard for us to have these conversations because in the end we're arguing about his news source versus my news source
But
and we don't know.
I'm asking for her news sources so we can compare them. That's what I want to start doing. We get the source and then discuss the source. So that's what we're getting into right now.
Yeah.
She's quoting these sources that she's familiar with, and I'm saying because of my infosphere, I'm not getting it. So where is that? And then she's taking that as I'm a conspiracy, thinking she's more into conspiracy. Because that's kind of where some of the left.
So what's interesting is like, this could have been a moment that you were pitched on policy or on a topic and instead, through this power of curiosity and through this power of asking how did you get to where you are, you're getting to a whole different topic, which is where we get our news. I will sidestep a little bit and share, there's a Peter Coleman out of NYU or Columbia, I forget which. I don't know if you've heard his name. He does a lot of work in this regard, and he created something with the organization Starts With Us called the Polarization Detox Challenge. It's absolutely fantastic. There are different exercises that you do every week. And one of the exercises that he asks people to do is to spend time on the news source that's on the opposite side of their spectrum. One of the other things he asks people to do is to take a look at a news site that really shows messaging from across the board. So there's a website called All Sides, and what they do is they're an aggregate. So they pull articles that are from left-leaning sources, they pull articles from right-leaning sources and from the center, and then they show each of the headlines side by side.
Your page is awesome. When I was clicking through.
Is it all on the website?
All sides, yeah. So what it'll do, it'll say like, they even covered, I'll use something that might be more neutral. They covered the Oscars, right? So there was the headlines from the left, the headlines from right-leaning sources, and the headlines from the center. And so that way, if you wanted to read about the Oscars, you could take a look at how it was being messaged in each of the ways. And that would cover all other things.
Orientation to what the Oscar winners?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Headlines and maybe.
Yeah, and then they do it for any major headline that might be coming through as well.
How they were distributed according to race, or what was the politicalization of it, in what form?
Well, I'm going to hold that topic off until we can discuss it afterwards, but that's going to open a whole box. But the key is, I want to say, and the reason why is that I don't want to get mired into specific policies. What I want to stay focused on is processes and things that we can help to provide. So in this moment, when we're talking about whatever topic it might come up, if it's the Oscars, or if it's water, or if it's something far more substantial, well, water's pretty substantial. Yeah, when you're drinking, if you need to drink it. That you have some things in your pocket. And what we've called out is the power of heart to heart, the power of being vulnerable and sharing your own story, the power of curiosity, the power of questions, the power of, I love how Dr. Cohen said it earlier, he said, the magic moment. And I said, what is the magic moment? Do you want to share?
Yeah, I think it's that recognition, that like she brought up about story. You're able to hear it and then go, aha, I got it.
Yeah, aha, yeah. I understand now.
Yeah.
Understanding is the magic that we can bring to this giant problem. Dennis said it earlier, the solution is in the problem itself. The solution is in the magic that we can bring to these moments. Now, sometimes though, magic isn't enough, we're just gonna get mad. So, in those instances, it's really important to remember some calmness. Greta Grace is going to share some of the physiology that happens to our bodies when we get angry. So, hopefully that will help us understand and how to break out of that so that we can get back to a place of curiosity, get back to a vulnerability to share heart to heart, to find that magic. Thank you, Kara. Isn't she great?
Yes.
Yay, Kara. Kara has done so much to mobilize the organizations together. So as she said, I'm here just to give a little bit of tools and tips for when we do get triggered. How many would appreciate that? How many feel like they need some more resources in their life? Okay. I know I do. Just this morning, I've been practicing my resolutionaries, so with my sister, who I haven't talked to in 9 months or more because we hit an impasse, and I circled back around today, and in the spirit of calm and resolutionaries, we had another conversation this morning. And at the very end, she said, well, this was really good. And I said, well, what was different? And she said, you didn't come out with, bam, with your ideas. And I was like, okay, yes. So taking a breath and just being able to just restart with the same person can really create some gains. So we had a really good connection. Of course, she's not voting for Trump this time, so it really helped. So when we get triggered, we can stay in these conversations as very well, unless we get triggered, right? So when we get triggered, I like to just show what happens in our brain, that we have the brainstem, we have the amygdala of our emotions right here, and they're tucked away very well behind our executive cognitive neocortex of our brain. So we're all really great right here until something happens and we feel stressed or feel that fight, flight, freeze. So we flip our lid, and all it is emotion talking at that point. And we know that we are losing the connection here. So I want to talk about what we can do when our muscles get tense and our blood pressure goes up and our heart rate goes up, and we're all emotion, a lot of emotion and very little. The idea is emotions high, intelligence low. So we need to just practice these techniques. And I like to, when I'm having these conversations, I really like to notice just even how I'm standing, to put my feet underneath my hips and to soften my legs and to just sit back. Because when I get intense, I burrow in and I have all this intensity. And as my husband would say, intensity and excitement and a lot of emotion look the same. So it's not as inviting. So my practice is to take a sit back and create more space here. So let's just take a moment with our breath, because our breath is the most natural regulator we have and the fastest way we can move from the fight, flight, freeze into the rest and digest. So let's just notice that we're going to invite you to take 3 breaths together, knowing that when our exhale is longer than our inhale, we're able to take in fresh oxygen, which is what cleanses the palate of our emotions. So if we would just do this together for just a moment, blowing out, emptying first, blowing out like a straw through pursed lips, bringing the belly button against the spine, emptying, emptying. And on our first in-breath, full breath in. And just hold it a second. Take a sip of air if you want. And just holding it for a second. And releasing. And letting your energy drop into your hips, down to your feet. Taking another breath in. Holding it at the top. Hold, hold. And releasing long tail. This is the part that activates the parasympathetic system, so you want to have this part really engaged. And then one last. Inhale, coming up. Holding it. And then our last exhale.
So just checking in, any noticing of the body, any difference? Who feels just a little drop in? Just a little bit. It's so simple. We always have that. I know if I get triggered also, sometimes people are excited, they have a lot to share, so they're talking. And one of the things I might say is, I really want to hear what you have to say. Can you say that in like a bottom line sentence? Or can you say that in 3 breaths? And if they say another long paragraph, I'll just say, and can you summarize that with just 1 breath? So I can hear. So that's one of the ways to slow it down so that we can actually have a meaningful, respectful conversation. Sometimes I'll just say, hey, let's just talk for 2 minutes each. Let's get out our phone and time it for 2 minutes so we can each really hear each other. And I think it's also helpful just to notice, how does stress show up in your body? Where do you notice it? How do you notice that you're triggered? Because the body is the first and fastest way that's going to let us know. What are some of the things that you are aware of?
Like jaw.
Jaw tight. Absolutely. Yes. We're like, so that gets tight. Yes.
Shoulders go.
Shoulders go up. Yes. Beautiful.
Shortness of breath.
Shortness of breath, shallow breath. Those are really the 3 keys of what we can, might be a little tightness in the gut. Yeah. So when we can do a body scan, if you have the presence of mind to do a body scan, you know, I'm still okay with this conversation. So these are just a few ways. Do you have any questions or anything anybody want to comment on? Yes.
Where does comedy come in to fulfilling with, like, when it comes to anger?
What is what?
What do people think about comedy in terms of anger?
That's the best. Yes, thank you. That will always be the universal.
It's pretty relieving, isn't it?
Yeah, we need some good comedy on the website so we can help.
Maybe the Red Cross can have a special division of comedy to go out to people in like urgent situations. Okay, that joke.
All right. Well, I think I'm passing the baton to, who is that? To Dennis.
There are a lot of conversational tools out there. There's nonviolent communication, there's a lot of active listening tools, and you've heard calming us down. Well, we have developed one, it's called CALM. It stands for connect, ask, listen, mirror. And something that we can all, when we remember to do it in the moment, is really helpful. And just to give you just another little tool, rather than me going through it, we've got a little video, we'll just show you a little 5-minute video that was designed for having these conversations at the holidays, but of course it's useful anytime. So let me just tee this up here.
The holidays are here, a time for family and friends, potluck dinners, and getting together to engage in the time-honored tradition of political arguments. No, I know, you've already decided you're not going to let that happen. You're going to completely avoid talking politics. But what if there is another way? After all, if we're going to solve the problems that affect us, don't we need to start talking constructively and working together to find solutions? If you want to have a calm, constructive conversation that doesn't blow up on you, try the CALM method. That's C-A-L-M. Connect, ask, listen, mirror. Here's how it works. Connect. Start by saying why you want to have the conversation, why the relationship is important to you. You might even mention what's happened before. Something like, you know, Mom, Sis, Uncle George, the last time we talked about this, we got into a big argument and I think it made us both uncomfortable. But I love and care about you and I want to be able to discuss important things with you. I know we're both concerned about how divisive things are. Let me tell you about this CALM method I heard about. Are you willing to give it a try? I promise I will listen respectfully and I just ask that you do the same with me. Ask. This is the most important part of any conversation. Be curious. Ask questions like, how do you feel about this or that? Did you read the news about XYZ? What do you think about that? What have you read or watched that led you to believe that? Why is this important to you? How you ask can be as important as what you ask. Your tone of voice is very important, and how could you possibly believe that? Is not a question, it's an accusation. If you can demonstrate that you really are curious, you will build safety and you will be able to have a positive conversation. And if what you really want to do is change someone's mind, don't we all? Asking good questions is the very best way to do that. When you are truly curious and not reactive or judgmental, you create a safe space for the other person to be curious too, even about their own beliefs. Of course, if you foresee things differently, you have to be willing to do the same. Listen. Be present. If they're talking and you're thinking about your reply, you're not listening. Try listening as though you have no opinion of your own on the subject. Listen as though you're an investigator from another planet and you are trying to report on something completely alien to you. Listen for their emotions. Be sensitive as well as inquisitive. And if you find yourself triggered by something you hear, breathe. Remember, something you might say could be equally upsetting. So breathe and stay in the process. Mirror. Repeat or paraphrase what you've heard. Doing this forces you to listen well and helps you know if you've really understood what they said. Also, the other person feeling heard and understood will help create the safe space necessary to have productive discussion. Congratulations, you've finished round 1. Do another one. It will work better if you do the whole calm process 3 to 4 times before you switch roles. So start again. Connect. There are lots of possibilities to reconnect. Say, I really appreciate you doing this with me. Or just acknowledge what's so. Say, wow, I learned something new. Or, your point of view is very different from mine, and even, I'm kind of shook up by that, but I want to understand and know more. Ask. In the second and later rounds, you can follow up on a previous question or inquire about the underlying emotions and values that are part of the belief. You can also acknowledge emotions you've heard in their voice, something like, I can see this is really important to you. Can you tell me why? Another line of inquiry can come up when their belief and yours are based on a different set of facts. If they're watching Fox News and you're watching MSNBC, you can count on it. So ask them about their sources. Ask if they'd be willing to go on a fact-finding mission with you. Together, you can research the way 2 different media outlets cover the very same topic. Or you can locon.org to see both sides of any issue, or check facts on politifact.com or snopes.com. Listen. Listen for values, especially common values. Listen for possible areas of agreement. Remember to breathe. Mirror. I heard you say ABC. Did I understand you correctly? After you've done a few rounds, thank them for helping you understand their point of view and ask them if they'd be willing to switch roles. A calm conversation can be very bonding because you can have a mutually educational discussion and you can reach agreement about the process, even if you are in complete disagreement about the issue. And if you just agree to respectfully disagree, you will feel closer having done this. Looking for common values and interests is a powerful step toward finding deeper areas of agreement and solving problems together. Like anything else, the more you practice this, the easier it will be. So remember, stay calm.
You've talked about the conversations where you felt triggered, where you had an argument, or went your separate ways. What if it had been different? What if you'd had a calm conversation, you'd had a nonviolent conversation, you had something where you were able to understand, you had some of the experience like we saw in the film? How would that have been different in your life? How would your life be different if you could have those conversations? Just think about that for a minute. Does anyone have anything they want to share about how it might be? Yes.
So being from Brave Angels and being active with them for about 3 years, it's changed me fundamentally. And this feels like one of our workshops. I mean, it's the messages and the techniques are the same. And so I've been trying to practice them as much as I can for the last 3-4 years. And it's changed who I am fundamentally. I'm less reactive. My relationships are deeper. My marriage is better. You know, it just flows into everything really. And I'm still working on it.
We're all working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I get this, even here, we're having some civil conversation. It's pretty hard to take it to the next level, where I find that once we get our belief, which our media divides really exponentially taking us apart, but we're connecting, but I still think we're not quite getting to the point to look at the other person's side. And she has an issue with her sister. You might, I'm sorry.
No, I know.
Yeah, and I think it's
my sister here today.
yeah, and I think I'm her sister because I'm on the other side. But I'm not getting the openness, even with me, and I'm pretty enlightened, I think, at least. But to get to the solution and really take in her conversation of what she's saying, it's very difficult. But anyway, it's really tough.
It is tough, yes. And we have the issue of we're getting different, we're living in different worlds from someone else. And one of the things I do with my brother, not all the time, but we have a deal. I'll watch anything or read anything that he wants me to, and he'll do the same for me. So we get to see the perspective of the other person, going on that fact-finding mission together, because we really all want to know what's, quote, the truth, right? We really want to know the answers here. And if you're doing it together, you then, instead of fighting over it, you're working together to solve it.
I'll just add one thing to that. Studies have also shown that if you have those conversations that are really difficult outside, they're better. And if you have it while you're doing something physical, like going for a walk or gardening or sailing, that also will help to make it better. Just the presence of being outside and moving helps to move everything through our body.
Yeah, Ruth.
I decided to go, rather than to argue about an issue, to go on a fact-finding mission. And so I called a friend of mine who was a staunch Republican, and he used to be a sociology professor, very to the left, and he made a total shift in his life. And I just asked him why he felt the way he did, and I listened for an hour. I didn't argue about any of the points. I didn't tell him why I disagreed with him, and it was great because, first of all, he felt listened to, and in our group, in our particular social group, nobody would talk to him about his beliefs because everybody was afraid that something would arise out of it that would be unpleasant, and we like each other, so we would, rather than allow it to be explored, we would pretend it didn't exist. And I think that this calm technique is really, really good for overcoming that part, because otherwise you would never undertake it. You would just know, oh, this is, there's a red flag here, and I can't talk about this with my close friends. So, and the discipline of not responding to what he was saying, of just listening, just pure listening. And after that, people were surprised to hear that I had talked to him that long, or that I could even have a conversation about politics with him. So I think that it is doable, but it's not being mirrored or modeled in our Congress and in the Senate.
Exactly.
And so one of the problems is that the people who should be showing us what would be the best way to find resolution and pass bills that everybody needs, we see this impasse, and then it makes it stronger within the population. So,
thank you for that. Thank you. Yes, it's the water we're swimming in right now, which is a water of othering and divisiveness and arguing rather than listening. But it can change. It is changing. There's work afoot to make it change. We've got the work of Braver Angels, which has, what, 500 chapters around the country? I mean, it's a big player in doing this kind of work. And
I have a question. So
yeah.
You're into changing levers for revolution or for changing things. Why not, since pro is the opposite of con, why not change Congress to progress, and then maybe we can get something?
I like that, yeah.
I should have had a microphone.
Toddy.
Can you repeat what you said? Go ahead.
Toddy, can you repeat it?
I can say it.
Toddy didn't hear what he said.
He said change Congress to progress. Yes, I like it.
And it's very good.
Yeah, sure.
So we can show.
Speaking of vulnerability, this is my daughter, if you don't remember, and this is why I do it. Because what the decisions we make today are the future that she'll inherit. And I want to make sure that the future that she and her brother inherit is one where we do enjoy this brilliant thing of democracy, which is dialogue and debate and the exchange of ideas. So when we shy away from that action because it's uncomfortable, when we shy away from that, we're actually shying away from the process of democracy itself. It takes courage. It takes a lot of courage. But for the good of little ones that are turning themselves in circles, I really hope that you will engage. This is our website. And the reason why we popped it up here is we have a resource tab. So this is a big thing that's in our country, and we shared a lot of things today to help have these difficult conversations, but there's some other things that might help. We organized it by action, so whether you have a little bit of time or a lot of time, hopefully you can dive in where you're comfortable in diving in. Beyond Your Bubble is a whole book. Bridging Divides Playbook is just a playbook. It's a few pages. It's a PDF. Here's back to that news question that you all had. Here are some nonpartisan news platforms and media literacy tool. The Fulcrum, All Sides, and Divided We Fall. IMWEG has a media literacy guide, so if you're trying to figure out how you can have conversations with other people about the media that they're consuming, that guide really helps. And of course, fact-checking sites. There's all sorts of podcasts that really are rather inspiring. Some of these are the name of the podcast itself, some of them are specific episodes. And here's some videos and presentations. There's the Calm Method, which of course you all just saw. Some TED Talks. And then there's some interactive exercises as well. I want to point you to the perception gap quiz. We began this entire afternoon talking about how the nation is more divided than at any time since the Civil War. That's a scary statement. I hear that and my heart clenches. But I'll tell you something else. More in Common has done studies, and it's part of the perception gap. We are not as divided as we think. We are not at all. We are a lot closer on policy than what the media would have us believe. Just like in any time in history, there is a portion of the population that is making quite a bit of money off dividing us. They're called conflict entrepreneurs. And so the key is, let's arm ourselves with some truth, with some vulnerability, and with some curiosity. Hopefully these interactive, our resource guide, we really took a lot of time in curating what's on here. There's also discussion guides if you'd like to do this in your own Home with your own groups of friends, living room conversations, they're absolutely fantastic. And then of course there are organizations and classes you can take to really dive in even deeper. Our organization is Resolutionaries. We have quite a bit, there's even for educators. It keeps going. Gosh, and election and voting tools. We really curated this thing. And, here we go, depolarization resource hubs as well. At Resolutionaries, we have, for the past year, of course, been very focused on the Building Civic Bridges Act, which is would dedicate federal funds at a local level. So polarization is giant. It affects our entire nation, but the only way to really solve it is person to person and heart to heart. So what it would allow is, through an Office of Civic Bridge Building, it would create conversations like this to just help spread the word. If by any chance you are so inspired, we really hope that you'll go to here on our website, the BCBA. This is Derek Kilmer. He's the representative that wrote it. When it was introduced, please note it is completely a bipartisan bill. It was introduced by Derek Kilmer, who's a Democrat, and Andy Barr from Kentucky, who's a Republican.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Ranking Member. I appreciate you having this Member Day hearing. I know we submitted written testimony to you, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about one of my priorities and tell you the genesis of it. A few years ago, I got invited to a YMCA in my district, thinking they were going to talk to me about gymnasiums losing money during the pandemic. That is not what they wanted to talk to me about. They wanted to talk to me about fights breaking out in their YMCA over politics, over the t-shirt someone was wearing, the hat someone was wearing, the cable news channel they were watching on the elliptical. They literally had fights breaking out. And they said it's become so bad, we can't ignore it anymore. We've actually hired a consultant that's training our staff, training our board in conflict resolution. We're going to host some events to try to bridge some of the differences in our community so that the Y doesn't turn into the Jerry Springer show. And they said, just out of curiosity, any federal support for something like that? And I said, not that I know of. A few months later, we had some bad news in my district. We had a series of attacks on religious institutions. The Islamic Center was burned to the ground. We had a church vandalized. We had 2 Buddhist faith leaders assaulted outside their temple. And in the spirit of something good coming out of something bad, they held the Interfaith Solidarity event. And it was awesome. It was powerful to people saying, that's not what we're about. That part of living in a religiously and otherwise diverse, pluralistic democracy is you're going to live next to people who think and look and pray differently than you do. And it cannot come to violence and conflict. And afterwards, one of the faith leaders came up to me and said, that was a pretty powerful 90 minutes. But if we were going to do this right, we would do this in an ongoing way. And they said, any federal support for something like that? And I said, not that I know of, at least not currently. I looked into it. The United States actually does spend tens of millions of dollars trying to build bridges and foster social cohesion as a means of strengthening democracy in other countries through the National Endowment for Democracy. But we do not do that here in America. So I introduced a bill called the Building Civic Bridges Act. When we introduced it with 12 in the last Congress, there were 12 Democratic sponsors and 12 Republican sponsors. It would set up a pilot program through AmeriCorps to support some of these hyper-local efforts in our communities to try to bridge some of these differences across lines of difference. We chose AmeriCorps in part because they have footprints in most of our communities, and under their authorization, they're able to do some of that grant making. One of the other things in the bill is to actually provide training to AmeriCorps members so that they learn these skills related to bridge building, so that we can actually have people on the grounds trying to bridge some of the differences in our community. This bill has received the support of civic bridge building organizations, of faith leaders and faith groups. The business community groups like the U.S. Chamber and the Business Roundtable have endorsed it, and institutions of higher education who just want to see us overcome some of this toxic polarization in our country. We hope to introduce this bill again, and I would ask, as certainly as someone who has announced that I'll be leaving Congress next year, this is something I'd love to see us actually make some progress on. I think this is something we've got to. I do not want us to just accept this level of dysfunction and polarization in our communities is just something to get accustomed to.
Please go to our website. Again, it's under BCBA. And if you would like to discuss polarization with your representatives in Congress, You can go to our website and easily fill out your name, email, mobile, all of this fun stuff. And we've made it really easy. The beginning of the letter is here, the end of the letter is here. All you have to do is click here and start typing. Tell Congress your why. Why is it important that we heal this? Whether or not the bill passes, I will share that this is a powerful opportunity to directly engage your representatives around this topic. Because right now, it's in their purview. So Resolutionaries, we've been doing this, but now that the bill has been introduced and will soon come up for a vote, we've been looking at how do we support our community and programming in other ways. And for that, one of the things that we are just getting ready to roll out is a group called Scale Up. So Greta, if you'll come back up here, and Josie. Scale Up is a group that we're getting ready to launch, and it will be led by Greta and Josie. And then we'll round out, and you'll be free to go.
Yeah, so the Resolutionaries team has created an opportunity for people who get into these conversations to have a place to process and have a place to really be more resourced. So Scale Up tools and tips for managing polarization. It's going to be every Monday, 12 noon, the first Monday of the month. So tell your friends, come visit us, and we're going to really create a supportive space to help untangle the knots that can come up.
Yeah, I guess what I want to clarify is it's an empowerment group. So we're going to teach a lot of tools for how to communicate, how to self-regulate. It's not a therapy group per se, it's a real empowerment group. So it's 45 minutes and you're bound to walk away each time with a new tool, and you'll get a chance to practice during the group. So please come.
We want to thank Dennis and Cara for such a skillful